I'm going for a pistachio macaron because I'm irritated. Oh goodness gracious. Is this making anyone else hungry? Hey Upper East Siders, welcome back. Sorry, I had to. It's a different kind of video today, guys. As you can see, I have honestly wanted to do this video for so long. You guys know I'm the biggest Gossip Girl fan in the world. I'm obsessed, and I've just really recently been loving these YouTube videos where people do like a deep dive into old, like pop cultural sensations. And recently I've been thinking with Gossip Girl, you know what, I really want to put in my 2 cents because I really feel like I have something to add to the conversation. And just a lot to get off my chest, to be honest, with people who actually want to hear it, because nobody else in my life wants to talk about Gossip Girl with me. And of course, if I'm doing a Gossip Girl video, I have to do it in true Gossip Girl style. So I think we're doing a mukbang today. Is that what it's called? I don't know, I kind of just wanted to get all dressed up in Gossip Girl style, have some amazing Gigi inspired treats, and chat to you guys about your unpopular Gossip Girl opinions. Before we get started, I feel like we just need to take a moment for the food on the table. It's literally insane. I haven't eaten today because I was like, I need to be starving because everything on here is amazing. We of course had to have hydrangeas, courtesy of Flowered, who are an amazing, amazing florist. They do same-day delivery and the most incredible jaw-dropping flowers, and these are just perfect. I know Blair's favorite flower is a peony, but for me, one of the most iconic lines of season 1 is, "Nice flowers, they're hydrangeas." It's just so cutting. We have macarons aplenty, of course, and these incredible brownies that have like pressed flowers on. These are from a bakery called The Blushing Cook. And they're so beautiful, they're vegan. For something savory to start, I have these really incredible like salad rolls. They're from a brand called Kaleidoscope. You can get them at Selfridges and a few other places in London, and they are so delicious. They kind of remind me of Blair's like sushi themed party from season 1. And then just to make sure I had something nice and healthy, I've got some chocolate covered strawberries, another Gigi classic. These are from Choco Fruit, which you can also find at the Selfridges Food Hall, South Bank Centre, or you can just find them online. They are absolutely amazing. And in true Waldorf style, I have a pumpkin pie. I'm not gonna lie, guys, I've never actually tried pumpkin pie before. It's kind of more of an American thing, so I am very excited to try it. And it came from the Primrose Bakery in Primrose Hill, which is such a nice bakery. So I think it's gonna be delicious. And of course, to wash it all down, we couldn't do the video without some pink champagne. So I think, guys, let's begin with the pop of the cork and toast to my very first mukbang. Oh my God, that scared me so much. I never do that. That's a boy's job. Well, to tell you the truth, guys, it's a rare occasion that I pour myself a glass of champagne. Well, cheers. Let's hope that I don't get tipsy because I've never done this on YouTube before. No. That is so good. There isn't really an elegant way to eat this kind of thing, so do excuse me. Okay, I want to start the video by saying that I am literally the biggest Gossip Girl fan. I've seen people come at these like discussion and analysis videos with kind of like a negative start, like they didn't really love the show or they weren't a big fan. I'm the biggest fan. I started watching it when I was 12. Can you believe that? So inappropriate. So for me, it's like defining for my teenage years, but I still love it just as much now. And I think that really says something to like the quality of the show and the writing, because I have tried to dip my toe back into other shows that I watched as a teenager, like Pretty Little Liars and 90210, and I literally just can't get past like 10 minutes because I'm like, this is awful. But Gossip Girl is just timeless. Like there's something about it. I feel like it's mature. The writing is mature. It's not like a teen program. The fashion obviously speaks a lot to me, and just the whole way that it romanticizes New York. I'm just gonna say it now, guys. I have not watched the Gossip Girl reboot. I just feel like there's no need for me to watch it. Like Gossip Girl is like has its place in my heart, and I don't need to revisit it, and I just think it would annoy me slightly. Like for me, Gossip Girl is perfect the way it is. Actually, that's not true. It's far from perfect, but I kind of feel like this new Gossip Girl is for the new generation, and it doesn't necessarily need the old generation to like be a part of it. That's how I feel. I also have to put a massive spoiler warning on this video because of course we're going to be talking about who Gossip Girl is and the ending. Okay, I asked you guys to send me your unpopular opinions on Instagram. And the question box went crazy. So I feel like there's a lot we all need to get off our chest today. Okay, I'm gonna start with the big one. Probably not unpopular, but Dan was the worst possible choice for Gossip Girl. Okay, I have a lot to say about this, about Dan being Gossip Girl and about the entire ending of the series. And I think I'm about to hit you guys with the biggest unpopular Gossip Girl opinion of all time. And that is, I absolutely love the fact that Dan was Gossip Girl. And I will tell you why. I think first of all, you kind of have to look past all of the moments where it didn't make sense that it was Dan, where he was like reading a blast and he was like, oh my God, or he was in the wrong place at the wrong time. Because honestly, guys, it would have been that way with anyone. And if it wasn't like that, then it would have been obvious who Gossip Girl was. You kind of just have to grant a little bit of creative license with that, I think, because otherwise it would have been so obvious. Also, sidebar, I know it's like a really big fan theory. Everyone really wanted Gossip Girl to be Dorota, but for me, that would have been a total disaster. Like, Dorota was a caricature. She was like the comic relief. She wasn't really a serious character, and I do like Dorota, but for me, if she was Gossip Girl, it would have just cheapened the whole thing. Dorota was kind of a joke character. So back to Dan, I love, like actually love the concept that he had this practically sociopathic obsession with the elite world, and he would stop at nothing to get in. And yes, even if that meant throwing his sister under the bus and sending in blasts about his sister, his dad, because I know lots of people are like, well, why would Dan say such mean things about his own family? But if he was a sociopath, which I believe he is, then he wouldn't care. And to me, that's like really compelling. We all know the kind of trademark attributes of a sociopath. They're charismatic, they're likable, and everybody liked Dan. But I really love the idea that there was always this dark undertone, like it was always a mask. And from that very moment that he was at that party at Blair's house and he saw Serena coming down the stairs, that's what kicked off his obsession. And I really like how they touched on that Dan was a writer and he literally wrote himself into the elite world. He gave himself an alias. He was Lonely Boy. He made himself significant and he made people take notice of him. He's narcissistic. He's a sociopath. It all makes sense. I don't even really believe that he was ever in love with Serena. I think she was just this like glimmering beacon of like, if I am with her, then I've made it into this world. She was more of a conquest. He loved the idea of her and how she would reflect on him more than he actually liked her as a person. Because let's be honest, there's not a lot to love about Serena, is there? But that's a different conversation. So as you can tell, I am completely happy and compelled with the idea that Dan was Gossip Girl all along. But that doesn't mean I liked the ending. I hated the ending with a burning passion. I don't understand why, when Dan was revealed as Gossip Girl, everyone was so cool about it. And they even went as far as to say things like, Gossip Girl was a love letter to us. Like, it was not. That whole scene just felt so forced and disingenuous. Like, all you have to do is insult Blair's headband and she will ignite like a vicious tirade against you. And she was just happy to sit there in her sparkly blue wedding dress and be like, it's cool. It was just horrible. Now, if I was the writer, I think it would have been so much more compelling and dramatic if, after all of those years of trying and finally getting in, he was totally exiled in like true classic Upper East Side fashion. It could have been the most extravagant and dramatic takedown in all of GG history, and he would have ended up right back where he started at the beginning of the series, on the outside with no friends. Tell me that is not a good ending. If he literally came full circle, and it would have given us such a better like dramatic climax than Bart Bass falling off a building, which was horrible. I mean, you're looking at someone who like worships the ground Gossip Girl walks on, but that moment where Bart Bass and Chuck are having like a Mufasa and Scar moment on the edge of the building, it's just the worst thing I've ever seen. I wanted a really dramatic reveal and a big explosive ending, but instead we got this very strange like reconciliation episode where the reveal of Gossip Girl was completely underplayed. And as a viewer who'd spent, you know, years and years watching this, I felt cheated. And I'm sorry, but it just felt weird to see Dan and Serena get married. Like, after everything, are you joking? Dan did not love Serena. I think it became quite clear that he was contemptuous contemptuous towards Serena, and I'm not really surprised. And she should have been contemptuous towards him too, after knowing what he'd done all of those years to her and her friends and family. It just made no sense. Dan and Serena should not have ended up together. In my humble opinion, Serena and Nate should have ended up together. I think that's an unpopular opinion, but I really do think so. I just feel like Nate loved Serena from the very start. Like, even when they were teenagers and Nate was with Blair, he always loved Serena and he was always there for her, whether it was in a friend capacity or more than a friend. He never really stopped being there for her. And ultimately, I think Serena just wanted to be loved. And I don't think it would have mattered who it was. I mean, let's be honest, she kind of had some issues. I think she just had this adoration complex. She just wanted to be loved and adored, and she would have got that with Nate. And I just love Nate. And had Dan and Serena not ended up together, that would have given the opportunity for Rufus and Lily to end up together, which I think is something we all wanted to see. Although, and this I think is a very unpopular opinion, I don't really see the issue with Dan and Serena being together and Rufus and Lily being together. Like, they're not blood relatives. So what's the issue? Yes, it's unconventional. It maybe will raise a few eyebrows with a few sort of prudish people, but ultimately there's nothing wrong with it. And it really kind of annoys me throughout the whole Gossip Girl seasons why it was made such a big deal of. Like, it could only be one or the other. I don't really get that. Love is love at the end of the day, but I really do believe that Rufus and Lily should have ended up together because they had so much history and I really liked them together. Obviously there were problems, there were dramas, like the sun that appeared and then disappeared. That was a bit strange. I liked that storyline, okay, but I just felt like it was a bit strange that he just like never showed up again. And final notes on the whole finale, who ended up with who situation. If Serena and Nate ended up together, then they wouldn't have had to include that really random girl Sage into the finale. I just felt like it was so misplaced. Like, this is the finale, this is the reconciliation, this is the last moment that we all get to see these beloved characters that we followed for years, and it was really supposed to be special and important to the audience, and yet they included this character who we'd only known for like really a few episodes, and she wasn't particularly likable either. So it really annoyed me that Nate ended up with Sage. I even would have preferred him to end up with Jenny, if I'm being completely honest. Unpopular opinion. Should we just do a game now? Like, every time I do an unpopular opinion, I take a sip of champagne. So they are my thoughts on the whole ending finale situation. Feel free to debate me in the comments, although I have to say, guys, I really do think I'm right. I'm going for a pistachio macaron because I'm irritated. Oh my gosh. Okay, another thing I need to know is your favorite macaron flavor. Down below in the comments, mine by far is pistachio, and that's even before I liked the color green. Oh goodness gracious. Okay, that was the big one, and I actually feel a lot better now I've got that off my chest, so I feel like we can move to more light-hearted ones now. Love Blair, but the way she treated people would be my worst nightmare in real life. Now, you guys know, Blair Waldorf, I always say, is like my life icon, like my style icon, but the truth is, like, that's completely true, and I completely agree. Blair in real life would be absolutely awful, but this is a TV show. It's supposed to be fun. It's supposed to be exaggerated. It's not supposed to be real life. There are elements of Blair that I absolutely love, and I think she's such an interesting character because on the surface, she is so self-confident and she's dominating. She's in charge and she makes everyone else believe it, which I love. But at the heart of it, it's all so deeply rooted in insecurity, which I think we can all relate to as girls. And I really like how she is this example of everything is perfect on the outside, but more than any of the other characters, she is just riddled and tortured by her insecurities. And not that that should excuse any of her bad behavior, but I think it can help you understand it a little more and hate her a little less. But yes, I agree, if she was in real life, like a girl at school, a mean girl like that, hard avoid. Okay, here is one that gets me rattled. In fact, I'm going to need a chocolate covered strawberry. Oh my gosh. I'm so sorry. The sound of that is either going to be really satisfying or utterly revolting. Oh my gosh. That's heaven. Oh, I got chocolate on my lips. Okay. Nate is such a boring guy. I don't fancy him at all. Okay, I have had 3 big loves in my life up until I was actually in love with a real human being who loved me back. The first was John Travolta in Grease. The second was Aladdin. Yes, the cartoon. The third and greatest is Mr. Nate Archibald. He is the dream guy. What on earth are you talking about? Okay, let's be honest. He is so handsome that it actually hurts my soul. And on top of that, he's a pure angel. And if that makes him boring, then so be it. But not all of us want like the bad boy. Like, I was never a Chuck girl. I don't like someone who's gonna make me feel on edge. That's an unpopular opinion because for some reason everyone loves a bad boy. For me, Nate is just the perfect guy. He's sweet, he's kind, he's thoughtful, he's sensitive. He's also humble in a way that I feel like none of the other characters are. Like, he's not a snob, he's loyal, he's just everything you want in a guy. Yeah, anyone who wants to say a bad word about Nate can fight me, but then on the other hand, it just means I can have him, so it's fine. Okay, we have a really good one here. I actually kind of liked Dan and Blair together. I don't want it to be true, okay? But I agree. If you think about it, Dan was the only one who was like intellectually on the same level as Blair. They were the classic example of opposites attract, but they actually had enough in common to sustain it. I actually kind of liked it, and that's also why it kind of cements in my mind that Dan never really loved Serena. Because if he did, he wouldn't have done that with Blair. Also, Blair and Serena are such different girls that I do not believe they would attract the same kind of man. Like, think about it. Dan is the only guy that crosses over between the two of them, except for Nate, but I feel like Nate doesn't really count because he was never really that in love with Blair and they were very, very young. And I actually thought the way they did it was really, really good because it kind of like got it out of our system, but it wasn't dragged on for too long because we didn't realistically want the two of them to end up together. And I feel like it ran its course for the perfect amount of time. Okay, I feel like we need a brownie for this next one. I hate the whole Humphrey family and Rufus is the worst one. Rufus. I like Rufus, I really do. I'm really annoyed at the writers because I feel like they totally destroyed his character as the seasons went on. Like, the whole weird love affair with Ivy Dickens was just repulsive, and they just kind of turned him into this like bitter, not very nice guy. But actually in the early seasons, he is amazing. He's such a nice dad. He's such a cool guy. I love his whole backstory of how he came really close to making it in the music industry and having one kind of life that he'd always dreamt of, and now trying to navigate basically being a single dad and having an ordinary life. And I just feel like he does it with such grace and kindness, and I love him. Right, let's try the brownie. Okay, it's vegan, so I don't have high hopes. Oh my gosh. That's delicious, and there's actually real flowers on the top. I mean, I presume they're edible. Okay, this is a really good one. Jenny is so overly hated. Now, I find this really, really interesting because when I first watched Gossip Girl as a teenager, and for like a few years after that, I can't tell you how much I hated Jenny. Not in season one, she's like adorable in season one, but season 2 and onwards, for me, Jenny was like the ultimate villain. But watching it as an adult, I actually feel completely differently about Jenny, and I'm gonna go as far as to say she's one of my favorite characters. I definitely prefer her over Serena. I think she's so much more interesting to watch, and her character development is so much more compelling. I'm not gonna lie, I do kind of hate how her style changed so drastically and she became this really like grungy, gothy, miserable character. And I know that that was like basically a reflection on Taylor Momsen in real life, but there should be such a thing like called acting, and just because you have a certain style in real life doesn't mean like the character has to too. And not only were her clothes like so dark and grungy, but it was just her personality as well. Like, she kind of just looked like she didn't want to be there the whole time, which I think is true. And to be honest guys, I know this is a me problem, but I don't think I can ever forgive Taylor Momsen coming on this morning and having Holly Willoughby like bright-eyed and bushy-tailed saying to her, "What's it like to kiss Chase Crawford?" And she was so adorable and excited, and Taylor just went, "It's a job," and like totally burst her bubble. And I was like, that is so rude. So that brings us on to another one of your unpopular opinions, which is Nate and Jenny were actually cute for 0.2 seconds. And I have to say, I agree with this. I think, is it season 2 or season 1 where they kind of strike up a little tiny something that's like not really anything. That was cute. And also when he moves into the Humphrey loft and like Jenny's kind of going into her slightly grungy phase, she's doing like kind of some dodgy strip tease with Agnes at the photographer's house, and Nate like bursts in as the nice and shining Armani and rescues her, and I'm just like, obsessed with it. But later on down the line, when she's got like her long hair and her panda eyes and she's being quite manipulative, like when she keeps him busy on his birthday instead of going to Serena's party, I mean, I just hate her there. But ultimately, I do think she's overhated. I think we all forget that she's like a couple of years younger than the other characters as well. And the way her whole life was just in so much upheaval, like moving to the Upper East Side and being thrown into this cutthroat world that she never really was cut out for. That I can imagine would be quite difficult. So overall, I do think she's overhated, but she didn't really do anything worse than anyone else. And I do actually really like watching Jenny as a character, even if I don't necessarily like her. I don't actually understand how people do mukbangs and eat and talk at the same time. It's so hard. Okay, another unpopular opinion. Agnes should have made more appearances. No, 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 hell no. Agnes terrifies me. Like, to this day, she sends a shiver down my spine. There's just something about seeing a person, especially a young girl, just totally unhinged, that really, really unsettles me. And I never felt comfortable watching those episodes. It was kind of the same effect with Georgina. In season 1, I feel like Georgina, they kind of made a little bit more of a joke. I think that kind of speaks to the whole series as well. In season 1, everything was very dark, very raw, and just as the seasons went on, that got progressively watered down. But Agnes was not a character that I missed once she was gone, although I did really love how they brought her back just for a really quick little cameo for the reveal of Gossip Girl. I thought that was very well done. I hated the way Blair and Chuck got married. It was so rushed. This is such a hard agree, and this is another thing that in the whole season finale, I felt really, really cheated by the show. It was just awful, and you really have to question like what on earth the writers were thinking. And the only kind of conclusion that I can come to is they knew that it was the end and they just couldn't be bothered anymore. I feel like they weren't willing to put the budget in for a big, glorious wedding. And not only was it basically a non-wedding and like nothing for us to feast on visually, but I just hated the circumstances that it was under. This whole like Bart Bass falling off a building. I just don't think I'll ever get over that. Okay, I'm gonna go for a vanilla macaron, my second favorite flavor. All of the parents are terrible people except Lily to Chuck. Now that's actually really interesting because part of that I agree with. I feel like Lily was a bad mother to Serena and Eric, but she was a really great mother to Chuck, which makes no sense. But I have to agree on all the parents were bad because actually I love Eleanor Waldorf and I think she's a really good mum. I'm not really talking about season 1 Eleanor, where she makes a lot of like comments on Blair's body and things that are definitely questionable. But as the show progresses, Eleanor is actually one of my favorite characters, and I think she's such an amazing role model. I love the scene, I think it's the Thanksgiving episode, when Blair finds Jenny like outside in the cold crying because she's had an argument with her dad, and she says to Jenny, well, at least your dad cares about you. And then Eleanor does show up and she proves Blair wrong. So although she's very hard on Blair and she sometimes gives her the wrong impression, she actually really does care. And no, she's not that stereotypical warm, nurturing mother, which you know, is something that is lacking in her as a parent. But I also think she teaches Blair so many other great lessons as well. She's so independent. She's a career woman and she's one of the only women in the whole series that does not rely on a man whatsoever for anything other than literally love and happiness. And that's what I think about that. Okay, this is a really interesting opinion. Someone has said, I hated the throwback episodes, and that confuses me so much because the Lily throwback episode is honestly one of my favorite episodes of Gossip Girl ever, and I just wish they had done a whole series just of like some of the backstories of the characters. I feel like I've read somewhere that there were talks of a whole like backstory series with Lily, and that would have been so amazing. Like I literally love Brittany Snow, and to see her in Gossip Girl, just I found it so exciting. I loved the retro vibe, and I actually felt like it added a really interesting and almost beautiful layer to the story about like motherhood and generations, and how as teenagers we're like horrified by our mothers and we don't want to be anything like them, and we vow that we'll be so different when we have children. But actually, as you do grow up, you find yourself more like your mother than you maybe realize, and understanding why they did some of the things they did and made some of the decisions that they did. Okay, next, Ivy Dickens was the worst character. And okay, I think there are so many questionable characters in Gossip Girl that it's hard to say who the worst is. but I feel like Ivy Dickens is definitely up there. Like, no, I just didn't really like the storyline, to be honest. And I think it's because I wasn't a big fan of that character. And I don't know if that's the actress or the writing, but I never ever warmed to her. I found her very, very annoying. And it was even worse, like after the whole storyline was like finished and done with, that she then came back and she continued to be a present character right up until the very end, was just like a big no for me. Speaking of characters I don't like, we have a response here that says, Vanessa was actually a good character, she just wasn't rich, so people don't like her. Ugh, I feel like there's probably an element of truth in this. I do feel like the show did have a habit of villainizing the poor people, but actually I can't stand Vanessa, I'm sorry. She is just so annoying. Like, she's actually very rude and judgmental towards like the upper classes, and she says some really kind of mean and snarky things that do really feel rooted in some kind of bitterness. There are moments where I quite like Vanessa, but then as soon as I start to like her, she seems to insert herself into a situation or a drama where she is not needed, and I just want rid of her. I don't feel like she was an irrelevant or unneeded character in the way that a lot of people do. I think there were things about her that were really interesting. I liked the way that she kind of challenged Chuck a little bit. I liked the way that she gave Nate a bit of a fresh perspective on life, with her whole like not going to college and working thing. But I just think there were so many moments where she was so annoying and just unlikable, but it's kind of written in the stars. Like, she's not in that world. She doesn't really have a desire to be in that world, and yet she's kind of forced to be written into that world so that she can exist in the show, but it never really quite makes sense. So I'm trying not to hold it against Vanessa personally, but yeah, not a fan. And a final one on disliked characters, Juliet was the best villain 100%, and I have to totally agree with this. Juliet is actually one of my favorite like side characters of the whole show. I just loved her character and I loved the storyline. I thought her whole hidden life was so interesting and enigmatic. You could tell why Nate would like her. She was charismatic and likable, but then she had this really perfectly subtle undertone of like nastiness and evil directed at Serena, which I think the actress just did so well. And then the whole reveal of why she was doing what she was doing, I just thought the whole thing was spectacular. Okay, I feel like we're coming to the end now because I've been talking for so long, so it's time to cut a slice of pumpkin pie. And whilst we are cutting this slice of glorious pumpkin pie, I feel like it's a good time to mention that I just think the Thanksgiving episode of Gossip Girl, when they play Jason Derulo, is just one of the best scenes in TV history of all time. I watched that scene on YouTube a lot. And also, how horrid was Vanessa's mum? Like, when she actually really wanted to go to college and she got the good grades and she'd had like a really big achievement, and her mum was so rude about it. Okay, here goes. My first time tasting pumpkin pie. Oh my God. That's heaven. Is this making anyone else hungry? Why is this not more of a thing in England? Although we do have sticky toffee pudding, and America doesn't, so, you know, you win some, you lose some. This is honestly my idea of heaven. That was the best thing on the whole table. It's a close tie between the chocolate covered strawberries and the pumpkin pie. Also guys, in case you were wondering, I planned this video very strategically. I have loads of family coming over this weekend, so none of this food will go to waste, that's for sure.
No, Cindy Lou, you can't have pumpkin pie.
No, oh my gosh, Cindy. No, naughty, no. Okay, I'm definitely gonna need champagne for this one. Chuck was really just a broken boy who needed a dad. That's why he did the things he did. So I didn't really want to talk too much about Chuck. Cindy, no. Chuck gets a lot of criticism, and rightly so. Like, he has done some terrible things, especially in season 1, and to be honest, all the way throughout the season. And that's kind of the reason that I'm not a huge Chuck lover, and I never have been. And I don't really want to get like deep into the whole Chuck thing because it's a really like big conversation. I think he was definitely a child who was completely neglected and unnurtured, and that can definitely explain why he was the way he was, although though I don't think it necessarily excuses it. Although on the other hand, I'm a big believer in redemption. I don't believe people, especially children, are beyond redemption. So I'm also not in the camp that believes that Chuck should never have been like given this main character status in this big love story with Blair because of the things he did when he was a teenager. So I guess I kind of sit in the middle. I'm neither a Chuck lover nor a Chuck hater. Do I believe that Blair deserved better? Definitely. For me, and this is definitely another unpopular opinion, I've always loved Blair and Nate as a couple. And that's probably because Blair is my favorite female character, Nate is my favorite guy, so it kind of makes sense that I like the two together. I'm also really smitten by the whole like childhood sweetheart storyline. I think it's really lovely. It always pained me slightly, that episode where Blair and Nate like rekindle a little bit enough to go to prom together, and Nate's putting in like loads of effort with Blair and she's totally distracted because she's texting Chuck. That like always broke my heart because Nate's a pure angel. And the last opinion I'm going to talk about, because she is the lead character and we haven't really spoken about her yet. This response says, Serena is super annoying and a bad person. And there were so many responses like this in my question box. So we had to talk about Serena. I kind of have to agree, guys. I don't necessarily think she's a bad person. I don't necessarily think she's a good person. And I don't necessarily think it matters. She's just not an interesting or compelling character. I think one of the reasons Blair became such a beloved character over Serena is because her storylines were not all centered around a guy like Serena's are. And again, that's not Serena's fault. I'm speaking as if she's a real person. It's just kind of bad writing. I feel like no one really knew what to do with Serena past season 1. I thought she was a really good character in season 1 when she had this whole like bad girl turned good, but has she really, and all of this dark backstory. It was really interesting and enigmatic, but once that was kind of over and then it was like, no, she is just a nice, good girl, it just kind of fell apart after that. At the same time, I think her character was actually a lot more realistic than Blair's. Blair's character was very over-exaggerated, which made her really fun to watch, but Serena was just a very flawed young woman who had gone through life with everything sort of handed to her, and I feel like that came back to bite her on the bottom later on in life, and I wish the show had kind of focused a bit more on that element rather than just constantly having this rotation of men to keep this character somewhat interesting. Serena, and most importantly Blake Lively, deserved better. And with that, guys, I'm going to love you and leave you. I don't think it's sensible for me to have any more champagne, and I'm absolutely stuffed full. I really hope you guys enjoyed this video. Let me know if you'd like me to do more videos like this down below in the comments, and please do leave all of your opinions on everything I said down below too. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you all next week. You know you love me. XOXO. Bye.